Here on the Colour of Country Life, great to catch up again with Andrew Partridge from Michell Wool. How are you today, Andrew?
Good, Ricky. Very well, thank you.
Everything chugging along nicely on the wool markets, are they?
Yeah, it's pretty much unchanged sort of market, Ricky. EMI just lost the 6 cents for the week to 14.14. Passing rate was a little bit higher at 13%, but all things considered, we're at the point of the year, Ricky, where a lot of the offerings varied, a lot more VM coming in, which will disappear in the next month or two as the winter sort of shearing starts. But all things considered, the market's going okay. Some of the microns are off a little bit on the first day. They recovered a bit on the second. And just looking through the quotes now, like really 19 microns were down 9 cents to 17.37. 21s are actually up 2 cents to 13.56. But it was the little walls, the cardings, lost a lot of ground. They lost 50 cents. The indicator back 50 cents there to 9.50, and a distinct lack of demand there coming in the cardings just this week.
Yeah, we to what extent one of those big headwinds, of course, is the Australian dollar against the US. That's one of the major headwinds, I imagine, of things going as well as I guess the sellers might like.
Yeah, that's right, for sure. Yeah, and when you talk about the sellers there, we're certainly missing a bit of the tradies, the Chinese traders, the guys, the Aussie exporters like the Tech Walls and whatever, and who's selling greasy into the China market. There's definitely been a bit sort of tougher market for those, but they've been more than amply sort of looked after by the Chinese top makers and overseas top makers. European top makers have been stepping up to the plate and buying more wool than usual. So, again, leaning into that sort of bit poorer selection the top makers like to buy into.
Now, you mentioned China. We know that Michell Wool's got a production facility in China. Are things sort of moving a bit smoother now in China? Are they getting on top of their COVID situation there?
They are, yeah. So certainly consumers are allowed to get back out, do a bit more shopping. The logistics-wise, wool's moving. We've been talking about that Shanghai port. It's opened up, and now I believe it's functioning pretty much back to sort of normal, but obviously clearing the backlog. A little side story there. Like, even at the worst of COVID, to get around the logistics of moving things in and out of states, they were actually physically taping up the doors of trucks by local authorities, so they actually couldn't get out of their trucks, but they could still move things into province sort of thing, but they weren't actually allowed to get out. They're actually taping their doors shut.
Wow, that's fascinating you mentioned that, because I did pick up a comment from one of our other analysts that even at factories, some workers weren't even allowed to go home.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So luckily in some places where these sort of bit lower demographics, I suppose, they actually live on site. They actually have a compound, and they actually live on site.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like that with your work, but in China you literally live there.
Literally.
Yeah, okay. Look, what do we saw a pass-in rate, what have we got, 13% recently. Like you mentioned earlier, there's a fair amount being passed in, but are buyers looking to sort of get an opportunity before maybe the index or the pricing goes below 1,400?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, of that 13%, 25% of that's crossbred wool, and they're just suffering at the moment. You know, the D-siles are down. You know, they're not even the broader crossbreds, they're not even covering the shearing costs. So it's a bit disappointing for those. Obviously, that wool's just covering their meat, aren't they? But certainly the finer microns, the superfine guys, they're bouncing around pretty joyous at the moment because they're getting good prices, obviously, but they don't necessarily have the meat content underneath the wool, but certainly their wool's more than less. You know, they're happy campers.
Now, I noticed in the commentary here from AWEX, there's this indication that there's a non-sale week in Fremantle this coming trading week. The market usually just adjusts to that. We don't see suddenly a spike in prices because they can't get their hands on it for 1 week.
You could give up doing the radio job, Ricky, and come and be a wool analyst if you like. You're picking it up very well. 33,000 bales, no Freo next week. So, you would think that that'll less wool creates more demand. Let's see. Yeah, there was a little bit more sort of bidding in the sale room in the latter part of the sales this week, but it doesn't necessarily, low volume doesn't necessarily mean a dearer market. But yeah, it'll help. It'll help.
All right. Well, it's good to get that analysis each week from you, Andrew, for Michell Wool. Much appreciated, and have a great weekend.
Beauty. Thanks, Ricky.